The Dice Tower, episode 619. I really want a donut.
The Dice Tower is made possible by listeners like you. Thank you for your support. This episode is sponsored by Renegade Game Studios. Welcome to The Dice Tower, a podcast about board games and card games, and especially the people who play them.
In today's show, we recap our Gen Con experiences and chat about some recent games played, but not much else, because I really want a donut, Mandy. Hi, I'm Suzanne Sheldon. I can't stop thinking about donuts.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson, and when you said donut, it sounded kind of Canadian there. Donut. Like it had like a little, I don't know if it was Minnesota or Canada, but it kind of had a, bit of both. So, I mean, hey, Timmy's has some good donuts, so,
I've never eaten it at Tim Hortons.
A nice honey cruller will, with a double-double, triple-double, that'll set you back nicely.
Is that Tim Hortons secret language?
Yes, it just really means like your sugars and your creams.
I know none of this. I just know that you and I really struggle with naming the show. We tried to name it after our secret two truths and a lie at the end, and nobody got it. And people were saying, what the heck are you talking about? So we're like, okay, leave that. So right now, I'm super hungry. And I really want a snack, and donuts just sound so good. So this is what you get, people. This is the show. Exactly. This is the show titles. Because I don't got a top 10 to put at the end there. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, that
I may be recovering from Gen Con in a very awkward way, Mandy.
I know, your voice sounds different. We're talking about donuts and Timmy's. Like, there's a lot happening right there.
I'm so sorry. Well, part of it is I'm barely recovered from our silly live show at Gen Con. Which, if you haven't listened, and I don't know where they edited it off, quite frankly, but if you watch, our team did not do so well against your team, Mandy.
Wop, wop, wop. Okay, but just so you all know, anybody who listens to this podcast that's, from Germany or who has attended Essen, that's probably the best way to say it, knows the game we played. I would say I'm pretty good at guessing number one, but that's not the point of the game. It's to not guess the number one answer. And I did much better at Gen Con.
You did. And maybe that made the difference because Z and my team with Crystal and Nick Murphy, we lost. And the punishment, the consequences was, I guess there's this well-known place and they have super hot cocktail sauce for shrimp. And we had to take a spoonful of it. And oh my golly. I noticed on the video version on YouTube, they cut it off at the end, but Z and I got into a physical fight over some crackers an audience member took mercy on us for because our tummies were burning so bad from this cocktail sauce. Maybe that's why I'm not recovering from.
I love Z who was all like, oh, it's so delicious. I'm going to take another spoonful. Oh, and then it's like, wait 5 seconds. Oh, yeah, that's hot.
The fool. But yes, y'all, we're back from Gen Con. It was quite the thing. It was odd because, Mandy, I barely saw you.
Yeah, I barely saw a lot of people. And it's like, oh, what? You were here? Oh, it's crazy.
But it's hard to see anybody when you have 70,000 attendees. ICV2 reported that Gen Con this year had 70,000 attendees, not turnstiles, attendees. That's wild.
Intense. And it's funny because I felt like it was not as busy as last year, oddly enough.
I think you're banana pants.
Really? Because usually I'm like trying to get through the crowds. I'm like, oh, it's crazy. And I found maybe I just had a good flow going. But I mean, that's crazy numbers. That's fantastic.
It just goes to show the board gaming and analog gaming, because there's lots of like RPGers there and stuff like that too. It continues to grow and thrive, which is exciting. But Mandy, I know you were working and I got to see you a little bit and you were having a good old time with Renegade. I saw some of the videos that you were shooting, stuff like that. But did you get to try or see any cool games? What caught your eye there?
Oh my goodness, there were so many things. I was like, oh yes, I'm going to try this. I'm going to do this. Well, we all know how that goes. There's a saying, oh wait, I think I thought of another one. I was going to say, if wishes were kisses. I'm like, no, that's not the one.
Not that one, Mandy.
No, not that
Retract.
One. Sorry.
Go back.
Try again. All right. So at Gen Con, there were a few things I had on my list that I just wanted to try, period. which I did end up trying. We're going to talk about later. But Abomination, the Heir of Frankenstein. I don't want to give anything away. We're going to talk about that one later. But that was one that was on my list that I was actually able to take home with me. And I'm trying to think. I'm going through my list as we're talking about that. I was at Renegade Games, actually. And they had a really big announcement at the Renegade Rally. So I don't know, Suzanne, if you were able to hear about some of the games that were announced.
No, because that event was not standing room only. It was standing room if you got there early, and then stand in the hallway and crane your neck and try to hear and see all the good announcements. And I did not get there early, so I missed.
Yeah, that's fair. I had some nice seats. I was like relaxed and sitting in the back. So
thanks for saving me a seat, Mandy. Sheesh.
So some of the games that Renegade announced that were going to be coming out through, the various quarters. The Aquacorn Cove game. And this one looks
I'm super excited for that.
Cute. So anybody who is familiar with the series, Katie O'Neill is the artist and author. And Tea Dragon Society is another one you might be familiar with. And this is now the Aquacorn Cove game is going to be a little bit more complex than the previous game, the Tea Dragon Society. Not too crazy, but a little bit more happening there. And it is based on those graphic novels. So I posted it on Twitter. It's getting a lot of traction. People are really excited for that one. So that one really caught my eye. There's also, they're going to be continuing that solo
Proving Grounds,
that they've started. So Proving Grounds, which I've played, and like I'm not into solo games. I like Proving Grounds. Again, we'll talk about that in another episode. But another one that's going to come out in that series is Warp's Edge by Scott Almes.
I did not get. I missed that announcement. This is the first I'm hearing of it. Oh my goodness! I'm stoked.
Yeah. And it has a spacey look to it. So I don't know if it's going to be up my alley, but we'll see how that goes. I may change my mind. Clank Legacy Acquisitions Incorporated. Yeah, that's quite the title. So yeah, that one is pre-order August 8th. You can get your pre-order, and I think it's available in September, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, so you can actually start pre-ordering that now. That was like, people were like, oh my goodness, they were excited. Kids on Bikes is also getting a second part. So I don't know if you've ever tried it or familiar with it, Suzanne, but it's coming out.
Yeah, I love
Super
Kids
good.
on Bikes. I think it's one of the coolest RPGs to come out in the last 5 years.
Oh, people are loving it. And then it's out now, but Icarus is one that I picked up. So Ivan from Geek and Center was like, you need to try this, because I like kind of storytelling games, but it's just the time I don't have to commit. And he said this is something you can do in like a shorter amount of time, but still get that satisfaction. So I'm excited for that. Let's see. Oh, Scott Pilgrim. So Scott, not just Scott Pilgrim, they have one out already, but this is Scott Pilgrim. It's like a miniatures game.
Yeah,
So
I saw that.
It actually has minis in it. Like people are like super stoked for this, So it's I think it's Scott Pilgrim. What is it against? I don't know the exact title here, but that's going to be in conjunction with Oni Press. But so keep an eye out for that one. It'll play very differently than the deck builder they currently have. Those are a lot of the launches you can look forward to coming out throughout the next few quarters. From Renegade, that's just from Renegade. But, throughout the convention, I have a couple more here. Team 3 was a nice, bright, colorful game. I think it's Brain Games. And it has those kind of building blocks. Mm-hmm. I haven't played it, but I'm like, oh, it looks so good. So I have it, and I'm waiting to play them so we can talk about the podcast. And I also picked up, and I haven't played, but looked fun, Empires of the North. I've never played Imperial Settlers. I have 51st State, which I've heard is similar kind of idea, and I like that. But the Empires of the North, I got a really detailed explanation of the game, and it looks really interesting, and it played, in a short amount of time. Not that I need to have a short game, but for what it is, I think it's going to be really good. So looking forward to trying that out. But that's about it. I didn't really get to try a ton. Oh, Trapper Keeper. So people have been asking me about this online. I've played it once. I've posted my thoughts a little bit online. I'm going to play it up again. And then Suzanne and I are going to definitely talk about it on the podcast. So I don't want to give away too much, but all I can say is, oh my goodness, bring me back to those days of school, because that is literally what that looks like. So very excited to try that again, and we can talk about it. So that's it. I'm
really excited
for
that one.
What about you? I'm sure you've got lots to kind of throw out there as well.
Not as much. I spent most of my convention helping out with the restoration booth, which, again, I support restoration behind the scenes, so I want to disclose that. And it was wild to attend a convention from that angle. It was just the rush for Unmatched and Spider Springs for Fireball Island, and the new conspiracy game was unexpected, and the line was down the hall, to the wall, curve the corner. But that was really fun to see and exciting and a little intimidating, I have to admit. But I had a great time there. It's such a wonderful team to spend time with, so that was very exciting. But I got to walk around a little bit. It's one of those things. I will tell you, Gen Con is not my favorite convention. It just isn't. Because the things I tend to really love about conventions is trying games, playing games, meeting people, spending time with friends. And about all of those, I get very little at Gen Con. It's just too big, too wild, too much going on, too much business to do, too many meetings to have, that kind of thing. So I didn't get to try as much or see as much as I would have liked to. But 2 games that I did get to demo, and oh my goodness, worth mentioning here, Caylus 1303. For those of you who don't know, Caylus is one of my all-time favorite games. In fact, when I did my top 50 board games video series, Caylus is my number 1. I've loved Caylus for years and years and years. And when I heard they were doing a sibling or a follow-up game, it's not a reprint. It is a fully, I don't know how to describe it, but yeah, it's not a reprint, but it's very much Caylus. Caylus 1303. Thankfully, Paul Grogan from the Gaming Rules channel had a prototype, because I think he's working on the rule book, and invited both of us, Mandy. Mandy.
I missed our game. I was at the Renegade Rally where I just, was looking at all those games I listed off to you from Renegade.
So Mandy missed the playtest, but you could have had a chance, and I'm sorry you missed it, because I will just say this is an insta-buy for me. I loved it. As somebody who, it's tough when they can take a game that you love and revamp it a little bit. That can touch on some sensitive points. Like, wait a minute, you're going to mess up a game that I love. It was perfect the way it was. The changes that I saw, one of them I was not so sure about. They took away the building of the castles and the majority thing there. I'm not 100% on that. But 2 things that they changed that I just flipping loved is they changed the economy. They removed gold and changed it to a worker-based economy that just hummed. It just sang. For those of you who don't know, Caylus is one of the earliest worker placement games. And it's a very much a Euro-style game. But one of the things I always loved about Caylus is it had a little bit of an edge to it. There were a couple actions you could take that went just a little bit more opponent elbowy, nudgy than your typical Euro. And those elements are still in there. And then they added these ability cards that you could get. You could also take them from people. Once you got, so there was some exchanging of that, but they were helpful and useful, and you definitely felt like compelled to take them, and there were strategic decisions involved in that. Caylus 1303, from my demo of it, I am in on that one. I was so excited, and that was super fun. The other one I wanted to mention that I was just so tickled by and had no idea is Miyabi, Miyabi. This is an upcoming Haba game.
Right.
And the cover's gorgeous. So, okay, I'm there. Then I heard the designer is Michael Kiesling.
Oh, hi.
Oh my gosh. Kramer and Kiesling is a very well-known board game design pairing, but Michael Kiesling on his own has done some amazing games. And when I heard that Michael Kiesling was a designer, and I definitely wanted to check it out. And I got to try it, and it was a flipping delight. So Miyabi is a polyomino tile placing game. You get these Tetris-shaped pieces that have little different icons on them.
Right.
And then you're going to draft them and place them on your board. This is a Haba game. It's not a 5-hour deep strategic game, but this one definitely this is one of their games that will appeal to adults and younger players alike. It was very clever because you're going to place these tiles and you want to align the icons in specific rows, but you can only put one icon in a column per round. So as you get an icon in there, you're marking that column. I can't put any other icons in here. It was quite clever. I really loved how these little twists just made this tile placement engaging and interesting. The decisions felt compelling, but not depressing, not like it was fun. It was just fun and simple. And I'm in on that one too. So Miyabi, coming from Haba, loved it. So glad I got to demo that. But really, that was about it. Mandy, I didn't get to try much else. I got to try Quirky Circuits, which I talked about in the live show, so I won't talk about that one again. But that was also...
And I played that one at Origins a little bit, and that's cute. So, I'm curious to see what other people think of it. I got to quickly mention, there was one game I was trying to track down. I couldn't find it. I wanted to get a little bit more, find some more about it. I don't think it was a super heavy game, but I was curious. Was the Queen of Hansa?
I could not find them.
I couldn't find it. So I'd be curious. I mean, if anybody says, hey, I found it, I played it, it's great, or it's not good, or whatever, I would love to know what you thought about it. So definitely feel free to, hit me up and send me an email. We'll give you all that info at the end of the episode. But that was one I was interested in at least looking at.
70,000 people, an exhausting, long convention. Personally, I'm glad it's over. I don't dislike... it's not my favorite con, and I don't actively... It's a lot for me. And I'm glad to be home. I will say that.
Yes, I would have to agree with you on that one. I mean, it was still great to see a lot of people, but yeah, Gen Con it takes a lot out of you. Let's put it that way.
And I know people that it's their favorite thing and they look forward to every year, and it's all that gaming madness is right up their alley, and I'm glad that they get to do that. But coming up, it's a little bit quiet. I think the next convention you and I are going to be at together is Essen, right?
Yeah, actually, you're right, because I think PAX U is later in the year.
Right, because PAX U comes after that. So, Mitty, I know I'm hitting up PAX West, but you don't live near me, so you're probably not going to that one, right?
I am not.
Okay. If any of y'all are going to be at PAX West, it's at the end of August and to the 1st of September. I actually I've never done this at PAX West, and I'm excited, but I'm also incredibly nervous, but I get to be on a panel. We're doing a tabletop meets digital panel.
Ooh, that's
kind
cool.
of coordinated. There's going to be some really big wig people in digital games, and I'm super intimidated to be on a panel with them, but I'm also very excited. So if anybody's going to PAX West, I would love to see you there because I'm super nervous, and it would be nice to know I have friendly faces in the audience. So that's Sunday, September 1st, the Tabletop Meets Digital panel. And then I'll be goofing around and seeing all the video game and checking out how tabletop is growing in that space. And then you're going to a convention September 2, right?
Yeah, so actually, my next convention would have been Fan Expo in a couple of weeks in Toronto. But with scheduling and work, it didn't really work out. So I'm saying that because a lot of people initially thought I was going. I am no longer going to Fan Expo in Toronto. However, I will be at Proto TO September 27th to 29th, and I will be a judge. So judging some games, doing all the judgy things, but basically getting to try out a lot of, prototype games, right? So it's something that I like to, if I'm able to try and promote and support if I can. It's local. Like when I say local, it's a 4-hour drive for me, so it's not that far, but try and do as much as I can within Canada and help people out. So more than happy to do it, and I'm on a panel with a whole bunch of really cool people in the industry. So yeah, Proto-TO, September 27th to 29th. Come by, check it out, come say hi, or hey, show us a game.
All right, Mandy, I think we should talk some of the games that we've been playing. And I know that we'll probably just cut it after that because it's very late. And I don't know. I think I don't sound perfect. Not that I ever sound perfect, but...
No, but you definitely sound better than my, ear bleeding pitch when I was sick. So you're not too bad. But yes, we're still going to talk all the games, but might cut it after that.
Sounds good. Thank you.
So, what have you been playing lately?
All right. Well, we're going to jump. Well, we just started talking about games, and we're going to talk about some more games. Right. Hey. So, I'm going to do a little warning, this game's kind of gross. I'm going to be talking about body parts and stuff
Oh my
dead
goodness.
body things, but just in case, someone is squeamish.
I'm squeamish.
Well, you have to listen to it.
Oh, no.
Not everybody else does. So just kind of throwing that out there. So in case you're like, this is not for me, I'm giving a little warning. It is going to get a little gross. All right.
My goodness.
I'm going to start. I know. All right. So you're probably wondering, what is Mandy going to talk about? So Abomination, Heir of Frankenstein. So you can kind of get an idea of where this is going to go. This is designed by Dan Blanchette, and the artist is Mikhail Palamarchuk and Tony Sart. Publisher is Plaid Hat Games. It plays in about 90 to 120 minutes, ages 14 and up, and it plays 2 to 4 players. So you're looking at about 60 Canadian US for this game, but it is currently on pre-order. So don't at me. I know a lot of you are probably not going to be happy with me this episode because I have at least 2 games that are not currently available, but are available for pre-order. Sorry, I'm just really excited. The prices for these I generally get from online. Okay, so Board Game Bliss for Canadian prices and Cool Stuff Inc. for American pricing. All right, now that all that stuff's out of the way, let's jump into Abomination. So, well, in this game, players are trying to create their own monster and make it come to life. The first player, the game can end in a couple of ways. The first player to make their monster come alive, so not just finish it, but like actually be alive, or there's another track where there's like a little police officer token and it moves every round. Once it hits that 13th round, game can end there and then count up your points and see what happens. Okay, so there are a lot of bits in this game, but don't let that scare you. You open the box and it's like, holy moly, there's a lot of stuff. So in the game, it takes place in phases. We have an event phase, a city phase, a lab phase, and a reset phase, and we'll talk a little bit about these. There's a lot going on in this game. Players have their own board, okay? They get a scientist and they get a few assistants. The scientists and the assistants are what you're going to use to take actions on the main board and or your personal board. All right, following so far, Suzanne? This is a lot.
I'm with you.
You're with it. Okay, I see your face and I know you're like waiting for me to pounce with some gross things. It's coming. So before starting a turn, an event card, so it's like a mixture of events or some bad things can happen, but it's read by the first player, and this can affect all the players or just one player, okay? I think in the deck there's shuffled like 4 events and some other cards, so it'll change up from game to game. So what ends up happening now is on a turn, players are going to take turns placing, their scientists or their assistants, keeping in mind that certain spaces can only be used by a scientist, and sometimes you have spaces that are used by a scientist or can be used by an assistant, but if you use a scientist, the space will give you better options or maybe give you like more of a bonus. So what you're trying to do is you're trying to collect muscle and blood and organs, tissue and bones, and occasionally some animal parts to create and complete your monster. You can gather these, in air quotes here, supplies from the hospital, the morgue, the cemetery, and courtyard. You can even hire some unsavory types to gather parts for you from, well, we don't need to know where, but they can just go and get those for you. Nice. Suzanne's face is really funny right now. Something to note is that some places have fresher parts than others. This is important because when you visit certain locations for parts, the cards list where on your player board they will sit. So let me explain when I say that. On your player board, you have these kind of partition sections. So, it's marked 1, 2, 3, and 4. When you pick parts, for example, let's say you go and you're like, oh, I need some organs and whatnot. If you go to the cemetery, well, the body's been dead a little while, so you're not going to have as fresh parts as you would if you went to the hospital. So potentially the parts you get from the cemetery might go into slot 3 or 4. Versus if you go to the hospital, they might end up in slot 1 or 2. These are important for a few ways because when we get to a certain phase, we'll talk about this in a bit more detail later, these resources, if you will, shift. So if it's in zone 4 on your board and it shifts, they're gone. And you need these in order to build the parts of your monster. So you need these in order to kind of pay for it, right? To get it all sorted. So this is why it's important. Fresher parts just stay on the board longer, giving you more time to, accumulate them and be able to build more parts when you're ready to do so. So that's why that's important. But we will get into that a little bit more because there's an ice cube that prevents them from moving. So I think it's supposed to represent like a fridge or something like that. But basically, it gives you a couple rounds where, you don't have to shift it. You just flip it and then everything stays where it is. And then you get rid of it on the next round. But then the next round after that, if you don't have a cube, well, those organs and whatnot are going to shift and you may lose them. Okay, so this is why it's important to maybe go to those spots where you might get some fresher bits. You can also... I'm sorry, it sounds really bad. You can also bump other players, which is great. You have to pay to do so, but hey, we can't go in the same spot as another player, but you can bump them out. Depending on the player count, you may not be able to do it often, maybe once or twice. So the main board has actions where you can also acquire cards that can affect other players when played. Again, some of these cards are kind of mean, actually. They can also help you mitigate dice rolls.
It's a game about assembling a body, Mandy. I think mean actions is expected.
Well, there is a way. I haven't gotten to it yet, but, there is a measure of your humanity in this game. And I mean, yeah, so you could definitely take a more aggressive route and lower your humanity, but you do pay for it in the end. So, yeah, okay, I see your point. So there are some cards that can affect other players. We'll leave it at that. And there's also cards that will help you mitigate dice rolls. We haven't talked about it, but we will, okay? That's coming up. There's also cards to help you increase your humanity, expertise, or reputation. Player boards have action spaces, room to build your monster, place to hold your resources, which we talked about. And then there are 3 wheels, and these monitor your humanity, expertise, or reputation. It's important to increase these tracks as each wheel provides different bonuses, like more scientists, better dice, and endgame points. Conversely, you can lose things when you are low on the track, so you're in the negatives, or if you move backwards. So things you gained, you can lose. So now we're going to move on to the good stuff. So in the lab phase, sorry, I have to do that creepy laugh every time I talk about the lab. Players can build or kind of create their creature as long as they have the required parts that we talked about, so blood, bones, and so forth. Players score points based on the parts they created. And the thing is, you could use parts from space like slot 1, but if you use stuff from slot 3, you're going to get points based on the lowest ingredients you used. And if you use animal bits, well, then you get some negative points because, your monster is not going to be as cool. Well, no, it might be cool. It just might be kind of gross because you use animal parts. So you lose some points for that. So that's important. When you're ready to make it come alive, this is when the dice are important because you need Leyden jars that are charged in order to roll dice. And if you roll dice and you get, it's like a little eye looking thing, yay, you've made that part alive. If you roll the little lightning bolts, oh, no, that's damaging your parts. And if you get 2 of those suckers on a part and it's on the skin side, it flips to the muscle side. If it's on the muscle side, it's gone. And it's pretty gross looking. I actually really like it, but it is kind of gross looking. Anyway, so yes, you can damage your parts. It's really hard. And these dice are evil, except for the blue dice, but you can get those by pushing up your I think it's your expertise track. And that's another thing. You need high expertise in order to make these parts. So there's a lot happening. I'm almost done. I'm sorry. This is a lot. So at the end of the game, you're also going to get points. Now there's objectives in the game that you could have gotten. So those are going to be worth 10 points each if you got those. You're also going to get points on parts that are alive, not just completed, but alive. So you'll get points based on that, and you'll get points on your board if you've passed certain parts on the wheels, your humanity, and so forth. You'll get those points as well. And whoever has the most points from that wins the game. So I'm sorry, that's a lot. This game is actually a lengthier game, and there's a lot going on, but once you get the kind of actions, really straightforward. So let me start off by saying this game, if you haven't noticed already, is extremely thematic. I've just explained it to you and probably grossed you out while I was doing it. People adjacent to us as we were playing this game literally were like, what are you playing? It sounds disturbing. And then I'm like, explain. Okay, that totally makes sense. So I find having that theme makes the game kind of easier to understand. And if you are familiar with Mary Shelley's Frankenstein, you know the concept of that. It's a very similar idea with the game. I liked the look of the body parts. My mom's a nurse, so I'm really used to being around anatomy physiology books, but that's literally how these parts kind of look on the board, like an anatomy physiology book with a creepy face. But I like that. So it's gory, it fits the theme well, but it may not be for everybody. So I've played it with 2 and 3 players, and I still find it feels long. So it says, what does it say, 90 to 120 minutes? No, it was definitely longer than that. Now, obviously, that's expected in the first game, but the second game, I still found it took long. And I knew the rules fairly well. There were a couple things we had to clarify. And we played with 3 players that time, which I think says it's the best player count. And it was still really good. Don't get me wrong. We all really liked it, but it is longer than the 2 hours. With the explanation, doing the game, you're looking 2.5, 3 hours, depending. So it is on the longer side. It didn't bother me, but that might bother some. So just keep that in mind. I had a friend who played the game and tried to win the game by doing all the objectives and not focusing so much on the body, a little bit, but kind of doing a bit of everything. You cannot ignore completing your body. if you ignore like basically making parts alive, you will struggle a little bit to kind of push ahead. Doesn't mean you can't, and you'll garner a lot of points, and you really want to focus on your kind of wheels and making sure those are up, but it almost forces you to kind of do a bit of everything. Do you know what I mean? Like, you don't want one track all the way down. You're going to get a lot of negative points. You don't want to just complete objectives, or, you're not getting enough points. So I do like the fact that it does kind of quote unquote force you to try different things. You don't have to, but I definitely think that's going to push you ahead. So if you haven't noticed already, overall, I really, really, really like this game. I think just the gory horror theme, I mean, it's one that a story I'm familiar with. I really liked it. I thought it was really well done. A touch long, but that didn't really bother me because I was immersed in the actual story. The dice can be unforgiving, but there are ways to mitigate that with cards, so you just got to stock up on those. So that is Abomination, Heir of Frankenstein. I loved it. Okay, sorry, that was a lot, but it was good.
I am so happy that you enjoyed that game so much, Mandy.
I'm sure you have no words because I know this is not in your wheelhouse, and you're like, moving on.
Yeah, it is. Just thematically, and don't get me wrong, I don't find it offensive or anything like that.
No.
I am just a squeamish person. Horror is not my thing on many, many levels. Like, I'm scared of it. So, and honestly, if the art was cartoony, I'd probably be fine with it. But the art is
legit.
It is, as Mandy would say, legit. So, Abomination, Heir of Frankenstein. That's all you, Amanda.
All right.
Going in a very different direction. No body parts here at all. No content warning here.
You're like moving away from that.
Unless you're scared of trains, in which case, content warning. Across the United States, a couple episodes I really focused on imports, and accidentally I realized this episode I'm really planning on talking only about imports again.
Oh, no.
But I got a bunch in, and I'm playing them, and they're fun, and I want to tell people about them. Across the United States is designed by Hisashi Hayashi, who is one of the designers out of Japan that's developed a name for themselves here in North America through games like Trains. The art on this one's by Ryo Niamo, and it's published by Akazu, which in Japan publishes, it's Hisashi's brand. Across the United States, if I had to describe it now, it is a cross between Ticket to Ride and a light stock game. So this is a lighter game. It's going to play pretty consistently, 45 minutes. It's that quick once you know it, which is great. You're going to have, similar to Ticket to Ride, you're going to have route cards that you're trying to complete by having cities connect. There are also these resource cards that if you can gather certain resources, you can score points. So maybe you need 2 stone and 2 cows. And if you manage to get that, you'll get a certain number of points by the end of the game. But then the stock element comes in because you're going to have a deck of cards, and those cards represent stocks for each of these train companies that are involved in the game. And on your turn, you're going to play a card, and it's going to represent that train company. So if that train company is yellow, and I don't remember the train company names, you're going to play the card. You're going to put a yellow cube on a segment of track. And then at each segment intersection, there is an action icon. So when you put your cube down, you're going to get to take 2 actions, the action at either end of your little segment. And there's a wide range of actions that you can take, but they're all around things like placing more cubes or getting resources, boosting spots, things like that. So you place a cube to not claim that section of track for yourself. It's really claiming it for that railroad company. And this is a very stock gamey kind of thing, right? You get those 2 little actions, and then you get to play a card from your hand, another one of these stock cards, to your collection of stocks. And you will score that at the end of the game, but only if you have the majority in that stock. Womp womp. Again, very train gamey. Not Ticket to Ride style train, but train gaming. Right. And that's kind of the whole game. You're going to be playing cards to connect these routes with train companies. You're going to be playing stock cards to try to gain majority. At the end of the game, you have to have majority in a stock, and then you will score. Each card will be worth the number of those cubes on the board. So if you have a lot of yellow cards, you want a lot of yellow cubes on the board. And that actually creates one of the more interesting tensions in the game because the stocks are limited. It's how they scale the game too for player count. So if you have a lot of cards, at some point you're finding the balance because there's only going to be so many of those cards available to play cubes to the board, that kind of thing. So there's definitely scoring in the stock cards that's important. But then there's those route cards, and this is where that Ticket to Ride comes in. Maybe you're trying to connect San Francisco to Seattle. If those cities are connected by all one train company, again, not you don't own anything on this board. But if it's one train company, like all yellow cubes or all green cubes going from Seattle to San Francisco, then you will get those points for that card. Where it also gets interesting is transfer tokens, because some of these tickets have you going all over the board. You can trade in gold for transfer tokens, and then let's say the green route, the green train line goes from the West Coast to the Midwest. But then you need to get from the Midwest to the East Coast, but there's a blue route that does that. You can use a transfer token to literally transfer trains. So, the green gets to get me there. I need to get all the way over to the East Coast. Okay, I'm going to transfer and go to the blue coast. So those transfer tickets are very important as well for the game to complete those route cards, and some of those route cards are very powerful. Some of them are harder to complete, things like that, and they impact scoring. I mentioned the resources that you can pick up along the way as well. And that's the whole game. You add up your points, and at the end of the game, the person with the most points wins. I really, really like this game. I've played it at 2, 3, and 4, and so all of its player counts, I find it scales quite well for that. It is a lighter side game, so I like that it's quick. I like that it feels approachable. I like that for some people, if you haven't played a stock game before or a train game before, where you don't own the thing on the board, it's really manipulating those stocks and those stock values. I think this could be a nice introduction to that concept in general. So I think all of that is wonderful. I have a lot of fun. I'm keeping this game. It's a blast to play. Now, my biggest complaint about the game is its graphic design.
Okay.
Most of it makes sense, but a few things, especially when if you're not familiar with some of these concepts, I think to make the cities findable, first of all the cities on the board are not exactly where they are geographically in the United States. They're a little bit off. So if you're familiar with a map of the United States and you're going, I want Detroit, and you're looking where Detroit would approximately be, and then you're like, wait a minute, where's Detroit? Why is it all the way down there, kind of thing? There's a little bit of that going on, which is fine. It's not a big deal. You have to abstract maps all the time for games. No big deal. But then I think for findability, to help with that findability, they color-coded the cities. So the West Coast cities are red, and the next one's over are purple, and then they're darker purple, and then they're blue, and then they're green, and then they're yellow. All of that would theoretically be fine, except some of those colors overlap with the company colors.
Oh.
So there's a yellow section on the board, and there's a yellow train company, and they have nothing to do with each other at all.
Oh, yeah, that's confusing.
And that can be, that, especially if you're newer to these concepts, that can add a little extra, what is that? I'm looking for this. Is that mine? Does that matter? No. Oh. And I'll say it reminds me of Jet Set. I love the game Jet Set from What's a Pull Games. The graphic, it just doesn't come up to modern standards of kind of aesthetic qualities that gamers like to see on boards nowadays. I would put Across the United States in that same category. It's functional. It's intended to be functional, but I find that color thingy not functional. It's definitely surmountable, but it's something I noticed that had been handled a little differently. So that would be my pick. I don't think it blocks you from enjoying the game. I think the weight of the game, the duration of the play, the concepts that it introduces, and just the sheer enjoyment is delightful. And the actions that you get to take are random. There are tokens that go on the board when you set up. So it's never quite the same. Depending on how those actions are clustered or spread out will really impact how you play the game and how you choose routes or way you emphasize resources and things like that. So I think there's enough variability that makes this really amenable to repeat plays too. I like it. If you're looking for a lighter game that introduces some cool concepts like stocks, I think Across the United States from Hisashi Hayashi is great. I believe right now it's available on the Board Game Geek store because they're doing a great job of trying to import those games a little bit more. So if that sounds interesting, check it out on BGG and you can pick it up there.
Okay, that's good. I was about to ask you, where can we find these games? Because you know.
And I have no idea how much it costs because I picked it up through Tokyo Game Market and I spent way too much at Game Market and I just kind of have washed that budget out of my mind.
One day you will get to go and I will go with you.
Yay!
All right. Well, I've decided to go from gore into art. So the next game I'm going to talk about is Artsee. This is designed by J. Alex Kevern. Artist is, I'm not sure if it's Janos Orban, and published by Renegade Game Studios. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 30 minutes. Yeah, this is going to be interesting. So I have a theme going on for the rest of the show, so you'll see after that. Artsy, I swear, I kept pronouncing it Artsec because the E on the end looked like a C, and my friend Ashley was like, Mandy, it's Artsy, and I'm like, oh, I get it now. I was like, the other title didn't make sense at all. Oh, she was right. Anyway, you'll see. You can laugh later if you're like, how did I even see that? But just throwing that out there for a little laugh for you. So in Artsee, you are the curator of an art gallery, and it's getting bigger, all right? Which is literally what's going to happen in the game. So you're basically building out this art gallery with new exhibits, and you want people to come and view these, you want visitors to see these wonderful works of art. And basically the end game, the most prestigious gallery will win. Okay, and we'll tell you how that happens. So to start, when you open the box, there's not a lot happening in there. It's some cards, and some are black bordered, some are white bordered, and you have some visitor pieces, or meeples, I guess you could say. They're tiny. And then you have some kind of portraits that are labeled, not portraits, but pictures, I should say, that are numbered from 5 to 9 in 4 different colors. I think it's like red, green, yellow, and I'm missing another one, blue. And those are kind of laid out because those are things you can acquire. So what's going to happen is players have 2 starter cards, and these are those black rim cards in your tableau. So there's a face up in front of you, and you're going to have 3 in your hand. Something to note, your cards, the backs of the cards have to be visible to all players. They're colored, so it lets people kind of know, okay, they've got a yellow card, so they may play yellow at some point, and then they may want to prevent you from getting more of those cards. You'll see why that's important in a moment. Depending on the player count will depend on how many little visitors you get, so that'll change throughout different games that you play. The rest of the cards, these are the white kind of bordered cards now. I think those get placed into 2 piles, and those are kind of in place of all players. So you're going to use this to draw back up. The arts have a variety of different types. The cards have a variety of different art forms on them. So they have still life, portraits, abstracts, and landscape, but I believe they are associated to the colors. You know what I mean? So red, I think, is abstract and so forth. So on a turn, a player draws a card. On a turn, a player plays a card on top of either an existing card that they have in their tableau, or they can place it to the right or left of this card. You're like, okay, why wouldn't you put it on top? Well, sometimes it pays to have a variety of colors in your tableau, sometimes it doesn't. But these are things you want to consider. So the color of the card played, or the colors on the bottom portion of the card, all other players with that colored card in their tableau that matches that get to put a visitor on any number of those cards that they have in their tableau. So if I place a red card down in my tableau, any other player that has red cards in their tableau, for each one they have, they get to put a visitor on it. You're like, who cares? It's a visitor. They're coming to visit. Well, it's important because they're going to get you points. Next, you want to look at the arrow on the card that you've just placed and where it's pointing. Is it pointing to the left? Is it pointing at the right? So depending on where it's pointing, you'll want to look at the card or cards that are beside it. So in that one column. And you want to count all of the art that matches the color of the card you just played. So if I played a red card and the arrow was pointing to the right, I'd want to look at the card beside that to the right and count how many red paintings are on cards next to it. So you count those out, and however many you count, that's how many points you get, because you're scoring every time you're able to place and count paintings that match the color of the card you played. If there were visitors on the card when you played it and you had to remove them, the visitors also count as points. So that's in addition to any other paintings that match the color of the card that you just played. There's also a set collection element in the game. So remember those little paintings I told you that we had numbered from 5 to 9? So this is like a set collection that's going to happen. So when you're doing a scoring, let's say in a scoring, I place it down. I had a few visitors on there that gave me points, and I got points because I had maybe 4 of the pieces of art I needed on the next card that was adjacent. So I had a total of potentially 8 points, and it was a red card that I played. I can now look at the paintings that we put in the middle there that's marked 8, and I can say, oh, I have enough points. I can take that tile. This is good because I can now hang that little tile in between cards, and it now counts as like an extra painting when I'm scoring cards placed beside it, depending on where that arrow's pointing. Keep in mind, you don't want to place those things on the end, Because guess what? If you place a card on the end and the arrow is facing out, you can actually sneak over to your neighbors and say, do you have the colors that I need to count for points? So as a neighbor, you don't want to build up your end tableau because then you're just kind of, pushing forward for somebody else to get points. So things to consider. But these little portraits or these little pieces of art I was just telling you about that you can place if you score a certain amount of points. So if I score 8 points and I placed a red, I can grab a red tile that's marked 8 because you need 8 points to get that. Hang that in my gallery, so it's going to give me some extra points when I do some scoring. It also has points on it, which you will gain at the end of the game. And if you get every single color, so the red and the blue and the green and all the colors, it's worth 10 points if you have all 4 at the end of the game, plus any points that are on it. And then it goes down from there. Okay, so if you only have 1, I believe it's only 1 point that you get. So that is also going to drive you forward to get points. So the game ends when all cards have been played from hand and from decks, and then you count up all the points gained throughout the game, and then you're looking at those paintings that you collected for that set collection element and any points on those. Most points wins. So it's kind of hard to explain because it has cards and there are some things on the cards, but I have to tell you, I really like this game. Now, to be fair, I do like a lot of Alex Kevern's games. This one was fantastic. It plays in like 30 minutes, so I played it during lunch hour. I've played it with different player counts at 2, I've played it with 3, and I've played it with 4. And I thought it was very smart. I like the idea of kind of forcing people to be careful when they're placing things on the end, because now you don't have to monitor your own tableau. You got to be looking at other people's tableau. You need to be looking at other people's cards. Otherwise, I don't know how interactive it would be. In this sense, it's a little bit because you do actually have to pay attention. Not a ton of interactivity, but enough that you need to pay attention and kind of check out what everybody's doing. So that to me was big. It's simple. The art on the box is fabulous. The art on the inside of the box, it's very, I don't want to say it's plain, but it's very kind of neutral. Like, it's not super crazy. The art on the actual cards are really cute, and they're like play on actual art that exists. So if you look really closely, that kind of thing, that's cool. And I like that kind of attention to detail. But I do find the game plays well. It doesn't overstay its welcome. Nothing is worse when a game's really good, but it's either too short or too long. And then you're like, it'd be perfect if. No, I think it's the right amount of time. You have a right amount of cards. Some get removed if you're playing with different player counts, so it doesn't overstay. I'm trying to think if there's anything I didn't like about this game. Oh my goodness. It just worked really well for me. And I found it was a bit of an explanation when you're even just me trying to explain it here. But the game itself is not difficult. Maybe the strategy a little bit and how you're going to play cards and where you're going to play them. But the explanation takes a little bit. I actually don't have anything bad to say about this game.
That's great. I like J. Alex Kevern's design so much, and I'm envious that you've gotten to play this already. I'm looking forward to trying it. It's just very clever and incorporates math in a very clever way. Yes. I think he just gets it, and I love the theme. Yeah, I'm glad to hear you rave about it.
Like, I'm curious when you play to see if maybe there's something that I missed, and you mentioned the math.
I love how you're desperately looking for something to criticize. Like, it's okay to be positive.
No, I'm not. I think it's
thing, right? Where some people think if you don't say something negative, or
sure,
if you say if you're positive on a lot of games, somehow that invalidates your credibility. And I completely disagree with that. And I'm so glad that you like this game. And all you've done is make me, envious, but also excited. So I'm glad you had such a good time with it.
I didn't have anything bad to say about it. I mean, maybe the box was a little big. Actually, no, the box was totally fine.
It's not a big box.
I was just throwing that out there just to be silly. Honest to goodness. Artsy, very good game. Check it out. I liked it a lot.
Okay, I think I found something to criticize, and I haven't even played the game.
Oh!
I think the name makes it tough to search for.
Or you could just be like me and think it said Artsec.
Right, yeah. So Artsee is Artsee.
Right, and the E kind of looked like a C for me, so
they're doing like the play on words pun thing.
Your favorite.
There, we found something to criticize. Yay!
There you go.
Another game that was a pickup from Game Market for me that some lucky people got to pick up at Gen Con because I was so excited to see Itten there is Moonbase.
Oh, yes.
And I don't think I've talked about this on the podcast before, right, Mandy?
No, it was on my list, and I unfortunately was not able to go and even take a look at it, so I'm curious to hear what you have to say.
Yeah, they were kind of tucked away at Gen Con, but I'm really glad that they're making an effort to attend US conventions because I think that Itten's work deserves wider recognition. I've talked about a number of their games on the podcast before, and they're just one of my favorite design shops right now. They're so incredibly creative, and they truly approach games as interactive art. And the design space that they play in, the experience zone that they play in is fresh, and I love that. And they give you a whole experience from end to end, visually, tactilely. We're gonna say that's the word, tactilely,
Sure,
and mentally. And I just love their games in general. So I guess I'm biased towards them. if you know, Moonbase is designed by Naotaka Shimamoto, and the art is by Yoshiaki Tomioka. And like I said, it's published by Itten, which is out of Japan. And this is a 2-player abstract strategy game about researching and settling on the moon. So the board you open up, it looks like a big picture of the moon. It looks like a big artistic representation of the moon with lots of craters on it. And one player's going to be silver and the other's going to be gold.
Oh, wait, I got to sing it.
Sing it,
Silver
Mandy.
and gold, silver and gold. Okay, now you can continue.
Is that the Make New Friends song?
Oh, it's that Rudolph movie.
Wait, is that the Make New Friends song? Because there's another song with silver and gold.
Oh, really?
Make
Now I'm
new
talking about the
friends,
old
but
school
keep
one
the
from
old. One
No.
is silver and the other gold.
Oh, no, I was talking about the Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer with the little snowman with the moustache.
Oh my gosh, we have so many silver and gold songs.
Okay, we will leave it for everybody else to decide which song it is. I'm sorry to interrupt. Go ahead.
No, not at all. And really, when you see this game on the table, you're struck by its appearance instantly because it's a bunch of wooden rings. There are blue
Cool.
wooden rings, silver wooden rings, and gold wooden rings, and they're small and large. And that's about it in many ways. What's going to happen is you're going to randomize these rings and stack them up, and then you're going to draft rings and then place them on the board. You get to draft 2 large and 2 small rings each turn, and then you take turns putting them on the board. At first, you're just going to be putting them on the board, and you'll notice the rings are perfectly sized to align to the craters. So you're going to be putting large rings on large craters and small rings on small craters. Now, some of those craters overlap, so if a large ring gets put down and a small crater overlaps it, guess what? That crater's cut off. You can't put anything there. So there's a little bit of not area control, but area denial or placement denial in that sense. So you put a ring down and you keep on going back and forth. Whoop-de-doo, right?
Right.
Where the game really starts to get interesting is that you can build up. There are placement rules for you to stack rings up. And I've talked about a game on the podcast before called Tasso, which has you just stacking sticks. And there was a feel of Tasso for me when I played Moonbase, but that reference is unfortunately very useless because I don't know very many people who've had the lovely opportunity to play Tasso, so I can't be like, oh, if you play Tasso, it's just like Tasso, because people are like, I never played Tasso. Anyway, if you play Tasso, Moonbase reminds me of that a little bit.
Right.
And basically, you can build a ring up. You can put a ring on top of 2 other rings that are on the same level. But you need to put a ring on top of at least one that matches. So if I'm going to put a silver ring up, it has to be on top of at least one other silver ring. That's very logical placement. But wait, there's a twist. There's an exception to that rule. If you can do, I think it's called a collabo ring. Collabo ring!
Oh,
Every
my
game
goodness.
I play, I realize there's something that you have to shout or yell. And in Moonbase, it's collabo ring. And a collabo ring is actually when you place a large ring on top of 2 different colored rings. And the reason you want to do a collabo ring is that you get to move this purple pillar that you get, the research tower, which is good because if you end the game with the research tower and one of the rings of your color, you get 3 points. 3 points is good. And it's fun to say collabo ring. So there's always that. At the end of a round, after all those rings have been placed, if any of the rings of your color are empty, if any of the large rings of your color are empty and on a level 2 or higher, you get to put one of your special silver or colored hexagons in the middle, and that will score you points as well. If you don't get to do that, there's a little hexagon that is kind of, again, more area denial, which is cool. And you just do that through rounds. You're stacking rings. There's some endgame scoring, like longest ring chain and highest ring. If you get the research tower in a ring of your color, you get extra points. You count up all these hexagons. Voila. A little bit of fiddliness in some of that scoring, just a touch. But once you get going, it hums along. It's got a touch of that dexterity because you are stacking. And sometimes you're looking at edges and you're trying to make sure that the spacing is just right to deny your opponent the opportunity to lift a ring and that kind of thing. It's quite clever. It's quite simple. It's relatively quick, but it depends on how much you immerse yourself into really thinking about those placements. It's got more to it than you look at. I love seeing pictures of Moonbase and understanding what I'm looking at. Because if you don't know what you're looking at, you know you're looking at something cool, but you have no idea what's going on. But once you know how to play, it's really straightforward. Moonbase is definitely one of my new favorite Itten games. Again, they've done Tokyo Highway. They published Pankatsu Factory, which is one of my favorite word games, that kind of thing. This one is rock solid. It is a table stunner. It is just gorgeous on the table. It's one of those games that if you're playing it in public, people just crane their neck to look. They're just curious. It just drives that interest and curiosity, which I love because it's the kind of game that you could be playing at Starbucks with a friend and people are going, what is that? And it's a game. Oh, I love the idea that as almost a piece of art, as interactive art, it can draw people in ways that some other games can't. Moonbase, a gorgeous 2-player abstract strategy from Itten Games. If you can get your hands on it, I recommend it. I've very much enjoyed it.
Is it on the pricey side? Because it just sounds from the components that it's probably going to be a bit more expensive.
I don't know.
No, sorry, I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
This one is one of my big Tokyo game market purchases, so it just got all wrapped up in the extremely large number of money I spent there. I don't think, the components are lovely. I don't think it's going to be unreasonably priced, though. But yeah, I'm sorry. I wish I had that information. I apologize.
No, that's okay. I figured it would be on that. I remember looking at it and going, oh, it's going to be rich, but it looks so good. So I don't like dexterity, but I mean, it has cool rings. It's worth trying. You could say,
it's not so much dexterity. It really is about strategic planning and placement. It's just got to, because you're putting things on top of other things, it's inherently dexterous on some level.
Sure. And you get to say collaborating. Yeah, just for that right there. And that's Moonbase. I'm excited.
Moonbase, yeah, from Itten.
All right. Well, the last game I'm going to talk about, because I've been really chatty tonight, I think I just picked really long games to talk about, is Colors of Paris. I like to say Des Couleurs de Paris because it just sounds cooler. But Colors of Paris works too. Very English. The fact that there's no U in colors is driving me crazy, but we're going to go with it. This is designed by Nicolas de Oliveira, and the artist is Fabrice Weiss, and the publisher is Super Meeple. It plays 2 to 4 players in about 45 to 60 minutes. Pricing is about $50 Canadian and US. And guess what? The other 2 games I said were on pre-order. This one is available. What? I outdid myself on this last one. All right. So the Colors of Paris, basically you're participating in a friendly competition between other painters. Ooh. So it's a management game where you're kind of watching, your paint tubes, you're trying to get lots of that, you're mixing colors, and you're trying to create these works of art, or trying to finish these works of art. Players have their own boards, and cubes in the game are used to paint. I played this game with, and I don't know if it was an expansion or not, but it's like an artist ability that you can use. And for example, you can get something like holding more cubes on the board or something like that. We played with those. It wasn't super difficult, but just to give it a little, punch to see how that worked out. So each player has their own board, and this is going to kind of be where you kind of house your cubes, and you're also going to manage your paints, your level of paint, how much you can paint, how many paints you can mix, that sort of thing. And then we also have the main board, which is rather interesting because this is where all your actions are going to happen. Guess what? The board moves. It has a little turny action that's going to happen, but there is some movement that will happen on the board. So it has levels, and not all actions are going to be available to you. And this is actually really dependent on player count. And then even if playing at full player count, there are just some spaces that are not available. So we set up our little pieces of art and the little displays to the side. Those are open for everyone to see. And then we start the game and we take turns placing on the board. So in this game, it's not a place and take an action. It's everybody places and then you resolve your actions. And this is actually really important. So once completing your actions, then we're going to go and resolve them in turn order. No, and we mentioned that not all spaces are available. The reason why I push that is because you'll see why that's important going forward. So some of the actions on the board you can take is increasing the amount you can paint, mixing colors, gaining black cubes, which are literally just points, and increasing basically all the tracks on your player board. Like I said, enabling you to paint more squares on your painting card, mixing paints, and so forth. You can also acquire primary colors. Okay, those ones are the easier ones to get, and those are the ones you kind of trade in for, obviously, mixing up the colors. And when you're moving up your tracks on your board, you got to pay for it. So primary colors are great for helping you do that, as well as the white cubes, but we'll talk about those in a minute. So some other actions you can take on the top portion of the board, these are a little different. You can take first player and take a white cube. White cubes are great because they help you finish your painting, but they also can help you pay for things on the track to move it forward. When you use white on a painting, well, then you lose points. Why? Because you're now diluting, right? Because what does white do? It now gives you a different kind of shade of color. So it's now tinting the color to something lighter. So diluting. So you lose points a little bit there at the end. But hey, it's going to help you get your art done. When you've taken an action, your meeples you lay them down. And you kind of say like, oh, what's the big deal? The reason why is because there's an action that allows players, if they've taken it, to take another action on the board, even if someone is there, but it needs to be based on an available action. So if you've laid down your meeple because you've taken, your action already, that is no longer an available action. So this is something to keep in mind. There's also another action that prevents you from turning the wheel. And you're like, who cares about turning the wheel? You can either not turn it or turn it 1 or 2 times, I think it is, if I'm not mistaken. Or no, turning it 0 or 2. I think that's what it is. This is important because after you've resolved all your actions and your little meeples are having a little nappy time until you're ready to continue, you are going to take back your meeples with the exception of 1. But before you do that, the wheel turns. And I don't remember, I know, Suzanne, you've only played it once, but I don't remember how far it turns, but
yeah, I don't either. Sorry.
I don't remember off the top of my head. I think it's like a half turn, if I'm not mistaken. Basically, that it's going to turn, and then you're going to pull your meeples back with the exception of 1. So this kind of is now your first move for the next round. So you have an idea of what's going to happen or where that meeple's going to be. It's like, oh, that's great. It's a spot I need. But if someone decides to take that spot and say, oh, no, not moving the wheel, well, you might be repeating an action. Or if they move it twice, you might be getting an action that, well, you just didn't want or can't do. That's really, really important. The game ends, I believe it's when a certain number of paintings have been completed, and then the most points wins. I think I covered it all. That's the general gist of the game. I enjoyed it, but here's the thing. I played with several groups. The first group I played with, we all really liked it. I played it again with another group. They did not like it. And I was like, why? So I couldn't figure out what it was. They said they found that there were times where they had nothing to do. And I said, really? I've never felt like that. They just felt like, oh, I'm just doing this because they felt blocked a lot of the time. They felt like, oh, I'm just going to do this action because it's something to do. It's not really wanted to do because all the things I want to do are taken. So that was their aspect. And it's funny because I felt like I always had something to do or I could make it work. But then again, I'm that type of player. I just kind of work with what I have and go with it. Sure, I was blocked, but I think that's the intent, to kind of prevent you from doing certain things. But then I would find other ways to get points, like maybe getting those black cubes, which are giving me 6 points. Or trying to move up my tracks, because when you move up your tracks, you can get points or more workers, which is really good. And very hard to do, by the way. I feel that is something in the game that seemed to be really hard unless you were really focusing on that. And then I don't know if it was worth it in the end, because then you are limited to how many spots are left and if you even really need them. So that was one thing I was like, workers are a bit hard to get. On your player board, the black cubes, you're limited to how many cubes of colors you can have on your board. The black cubes are on the board, but they aren't anything but points. So I didn't understand why they were in that kind of section. I think the white cubes should have been on the board because those ones mattered as to, how many you had, but those ones you had to track. So I feel like that was a bit confusing, and those should have been on the board. The black cube should not have had anything to do with that. So that was something I think that could have made that visually a little bit better for people. I also feel the game could use another round. I found it was a little abrupt. I feel like it's one of those things where it's hard because you don't want it to, you're almost worried that if you add another round, it might be too long. But then by not adding it, I felt like, I needed that extra time to do things. But it wasn't like some games are like, stressed, I didn't do it, but it was so good. It was like, no, like it could have used that little extra push to kind of get that in there. Otherwise, I felt like I was struggling a little bit to kind of get things finished. So I think it needed that extra time. Overall, I liked the concept of the game. I liked working with the extra abilities of the painters, getting extra cubes or potentially starting a bit higher on a track. I mean, that's always nice to have that ability, and you don't have to play with that, but it adds some change to the game. I enjoyed Colors of Paris. I understand why the other people I played with didn't like it, but I also have the mindset of, great, that's not working, I'm going to do this instead. But that's how I play games, and if you don't play games like that, you might struggle here, I think, a little bit. Colors of Paris, overall, I enjoyed it. I do see a few things that could be tweaked, for sure, but I think it's still a game that I would, if it was brought to the table, I would absolutely play it again.
Awesome. All right, to wrap up here, I'm going to talk about a game called Heul Doch Mau Mau. I think that translates to something like you're a crybaby.
Oh my goodness, that's so great.
I don't quite know, but the game is it's a card game, and it's all the art on all the cards, it's all onions. It's all different types of onions. The design is by Leo Colovini, and the art is by Merrick Blah, and it's published by Ravensburger.
Oh, okay.
And it's one of those little card games that I often love. €10. I ordered it through Amazon.de. Simple, easy peasy, lemon squeezy kind of thing. Now, what really caught my eye on this one at first was Leo Colovini, because they're the designer of Cartagena and Incognito, which are two great games. Both are a little bit older, but Leo's been an active designer for years now. But okay, a little card game from Leo. I'll check it out. Heul Doch Mau Mau is a deck of cards, 1 through 7. They've got all these pictures of onions, these cartoony onions. I think the art is charming. I really get a kick out of it. So you have 1 to 7 twice each, and you're going to shuffle them all up. There's some special cards as well that you can choose to add in or not. For any kind of experienced player, I would say add them in for sure. And the cards are colored and numbered.
Okay.
And so you're going to shuffle them up and deal them out, have a big old stack in the middle for the draw pile. And on your turn, it's such a simple game. On your turn, you play a card from your hand to a discard pile, hopefully your own discard pile, because your discard pile will be points for you at the end of the game.
Oh.
When you play a card from your hand, you put it into a discard pile, it must match the color or the number of the top card of that pile. And that's great.
Sorry. So if you're all wondering, I just messaged Suzanne with the translation, hence the pause of what it means, and I'm having a good laugh because it's funny. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, the translation is go ahead and cry. Yeah, it's not a nice game. And unfortunately, if the color or number on one of your neighbor's decks or discard piles matches, you have to give it to them. You have to play it there. So Mandy, if I play a red 3 and you have a green 3 on your discard pile, the top card, I actually have to play my red 3 on top of your green 3.
Okay.
I have to give it to you. So when I play a card, it goes on top of my discard only if it doesn't match my neighbor's at all and it matches my pile. Now, to balance that, you have the option to flip it over and play it to your pile as it's got a gray back, whatever, a plain onion on the back. And that's great. So then you don't have to give cards to your opponent.
Sure.
Because at the end of the game, you're going to go through your discard pile and you will score points equal to the value of the cards in that discard pile.
Oh.
That's a big deal.
That's huge.
And if you flip a card over and you put it to your gray back, it's not going to count for any points in your pile. Okay, so be it. But wait, there's a twist. So all of that is pretty basic, really. And there's some interesting things about, well, do I play this card now or do I hold on to it and hope that Mandy loses that green 3 so I can finally play it to my pile? Okay, whatever. But where the game gets interesting is this gray card thing. Because, yeah, you can flip it over and place it to your deck or your discard pile. But you have to kind of mentally track how many of these you play. Because at the end of the game, you're going to go through your discard pile and you're going to pull out all those gray cards and you're going to count them. Let's say I have 6 gray cards. All of the 6 value cards in my discard pile get discarded. So the number of gray cards will determine the cards you have to pull out of your discard pile and remove from scoring.
Ooh.
And let's say you're not tracking well and you're like, oh, I have 5. So I'll play a lot of not 5 cards. Like I'll play a 4. I'll play another 4. Oh, because that's no big deal because I know I have 5 gray cards in my deck. And you forgot, oh no, whoops, I miscounted. And then you lose all those 4 cards. That's why it's go ahead and cry, baby. Right? The Heul Doch Mau Mau.
Boo-hoo.
That little twist is very interesting. And it's worse if you get more. Because, like I mentioned earlier, it's cards 1 through 7. If you have 9 gray cards, you will lose all of your 7 cards and all of your 2 cards. Because 7 plus 2 is 9.
Oh my gosh.
So you don't want a lot. No matter what, you don't want a lot. And remember, it's the value of the cards in your discard piles what scores. So losing your 7s, that's losing a lot of points.
Oh, for sure.
So that's the twist in this little card game, Heul Doch Mau Mau, that makes it a more compelling game. There are special cards that you can choose to use or not that are awful and funny at the same time because they do things like make you swap the top card of your deck with an opponent or flip cards over, which can help or hurt you at times. I think that those are very interesting. Is Heul Doch Mau Mau a great game? It's a good game. I think that there's a lot of randomness in it. I think the thing where you only impact your neighbors I think that mechanism in general is pretty touchy. I actually don't like it in Seven Wonders. I like it in other games, though. Go figure. In Heul Doch Mau Mau, I think it's fine, but it's not great. But there is that twist that just makes it compelling. I have fun playing it. But a lot of the fun is just in the energy of the group. And the other thing I want to mention about Heul Doch Mau Mau is the components. This is a card game. But when you open it up, you're going to find a little surprise in the components.
Oh, do I want to know it's an onion?
It literally includes a tissue. It literally includes a folded, nice, neat, clean, brand new folded tissue for your tears. You crybaby. Go ahead and cry. And the game even provides for that. It's one of the weirdest things I've ever seen in a game. And it's hilarious. It cracks me up every time I open the box and I see this little tissue. So I don't know what to tell you about Heul Doch Mau Mau. It's a good game. I have fun playing it. I don't know if it's for you. I don't know how people come up with this stuff, but I've had fun playing it. If you can deal with some randomness, those special cards are fun, but they're very random on whether or not you get to use them. It's worth, at the very least, I truly hope you get to try it, y'all, because you're going to realize it's called Go Ahead and Cry for a reason. When you start counting those great cards, there's always a few people at the table letting you know that is not how they wanted it to work out.
Oh my
So that
goodness.
is Heul Doch Mau Mau from Ravensburger.
Oh, well, that's it's definitely interesting. So I might have to kind of try that out, to try before buy, because I don't know, I don't want to be mean, but it does sound, I'm going to say interesting.
There you go. All right, folks, we are going to call that an episode today. Post Gen Con, we've had a couple of long episodes leading up to that Gen Con preview show with all 4 of us that took 9 hours.
But people seem to like it, so I don't know. I have to apologize today. I mean, the ADHD was strong tonight, okay? So I started getting a little babbly. Hopefully it was entertaining and you were enjoying the talk of games. If not, that's okay, and you can let me know.
Coming up, we're going to have a Q&A session next time. I think next episode, Mandy and I are on.
Yeah,
so
we're overdue and we've got some questions. Yeah,
but we would love some more. I think, Mandy, you've got a few more than I do, so feel free to send us your questions about games, conventions, pie, whatever you have. My email is Suzanne@dicetower.com.
And I'm Mandy. That's Mandy with an I at dicetower.com.
As always, we are so grateful to have you on this show. It is honor and privilege to be able to talk about games with you, and we hope that you have been we hope that you find some treasures through our little chit chats. I don't know about body part piecing together treasures, but one man's trash is another man's treasure and all that good stuff.
Sure, or animal parts. I mean, whatever you can find, really.
Whatever. Oh, good gravy. Next episode is episode 620. Tom and Eric will be back. And I said this a couple episodes ago, but then we threw that audible with the Gen Con preview show. So they will actually be talking about their favorite 7-player games in episode 620. Until next time, I'm Suzanne Sheldon.
And I'm Mandy Hutchinson.
And you've been listening to The Dice Tower.
Thanks for listening. Promotional consideration has been provided by game publishers in the form of review copies of games. This podcast is sponsored by listeners like you. Thank you for your continued support. And speaking of support, the Jack Basil Memorial Fund is an organization dedicated to helping gamers in need. Learn more about the fund's mission and how you can help at jackbasil.org. The Dice Tower is produced by Tom, Suzanne, Mandi, and Eric with assistance from Roy Cannaday and Rob Searing. Our theme is composed by Timothy Pinkham and arranged by Matt Bellier, and hosting is provided by Cool Stuff Inc. Let us know what you think of the show by posting to the Dice Tower Guild at BoardGameGeek.com, following the Dice Tower on Twitter, or by emailing us at dicetower@gmail.com. And don't forget to visit the other shows in the Dice Tower Network at dicetowernetwork.com. Until next time, from all the gang at the Dice Tower, have fun gaming.
Mandi,
What?
I still want a donut. I'm like craving a donut. I cannot even express to you how deeply I really want a donut right now.
We are so close. We just have this little bit to do, and then you can eat all the donuts. All right, with sprinkles.
I'm sorry I interrupted you. I just had to share.
That is okay. So let's get to it. 2 truths and a lie. Let us recap last episode before we jump in here. So into the new ones. So I'll start with mine here. I own 3 video cameras. I own 3 microphones. And I own 4 webcams. I know, this was a tough one. So if you said I own 3 microphones was the lie, that would be correct. I actually only own 2.
You goof.
I know. What about you, Suzanne?
All right, last episode I said I own a sloth onesie. I own a narwhal onesie. And I own a Totoro onesie. And the lie is that I own a Totoro onesie. I do not own a Totoro onesie yet. It shall be mine.
This could still happen.
It's in my shopping cart. One day soon. One day soon, I'll not be able to resist the power of being Totoro.
And you will do it. I think
it's getting late. I'm like donuts, Totoro, whatever.
I know. There's a thing going on. All right. So my new ones for this episode, I think, you know what, now that I'm looking at it, I think we were just hungry in general. So let's just get into it here. I had my second Dr. Pepper ever at Gen Con. I like my steak well done. And I can fit 21 marshmallows in my mouth all at once.
Oh, gosh.
Yeah.
I love that.
Thing.
That's amazing.
What about
this
you,
episode
Suzanne?
for me, a favorite place to go on dates for me was the airport. A favorite place to go on dates for me was the movies. And a favorite place to go on dates for me was the comic shop.
Ooh, this is a tough one. This will be interesting. Well, there you have it, everyone. Good luck. Terror Below is a game of government experiments gone wild in the Nevada desert. Your heroes will visit locations around the small desert town to find bounties, scavenge for weapons, and try to survive as you distract the worms. Learn how to play in English and en français on the Dice Tower with me. Terror Below will be available August 2019.